Hello world, welcome back to Razor RC. It's time to do the full review of the Schumacher Cougar Laydown stock spec. So this is their latest two-wheel drive race buggy, 10 scale, and has been on the market for about, I don't know, 6 months or so. Came out in the beginning of 2020, and this review has kind of been long in coming because obviously of the pandemic and everything. Just have not been able to get as much track time on this, so it did take quite a few months for me to collect enough information and enough experience with this buggy to finally do the full review. So here we're going to get into it. Before we start, if you want to pick this up, Discount RC Store does have a sale on this right now, so it sells for $3.99. And if you buy $440 worth of stuff from Discount RC, including the Cougar Laydown stock spec, you get 10% off your whole order. So a pretty good deal if you're looking to pick one of these up. Let's kind of look at my particular buggy because it is not stock, even though it's called the stock spec. Do have a lot of modifications. So here is the body, kind of a lightweight body, and then my particular kit, I'm running a lot of brass. I'm running the brass ESC plate, the brass servo weight. I'm running the Trish bits, shin splitter is what it's called. I'm running actually the aluminum chassis as well, and then the aluminum battery nuts there, a lot of carbon fiber and aluminum on this kit. So mine, I actually am running the aluminum hub carriers in the front, the aluminum camber block, the aluminum bell cranks there on the steering system, and I think that's pretty much it. Oh, the aluminum rear camber block and a rear sway bar, I think the thickest one they make. I forget exactly what sway bar. In terms of the setup, I am running the Michael Orlowski like carpet setup, so that's running pretty well actually for my particular buggy. Works well. I'm running this obviously on carpet. You can see the carpet tires there as well. So yeah, that's basically how I'm running my kit. Now, the differences between the stock spec and the regular Cougar Laydown are a bunch of basically lightweight parts. So first off, it does come with this super fancy carbon fiber chassis. I am not running that because I found it just to be a little too light out of the box with, you know, fairly light electronics here. The buggy weighs probably around 1350 grams, so that is way underweight for here in the United States. Minimum weight is 1499 grams. So part of the reason I got the aluminum chassis is just to bring a lot of weight down low. That's the ideal place to put it, especially for something like carpet where you don't need a lot of flex and you really want to avoid traction rolling. So I have all the brass weights, bunch of aluminum stuff. So overall, yeah, I added a ton of weights. I'm running a LCG battery, and all this combined, now I'm at about 1499 grams. But the stock spec has got the lightweight body, it's got the carbon fiber chassis. It's actually got like a carbon fiber composite transmission case. This is super light actually. It does make a difference. You can actually tell it is much lighter. It's got the carbon fiber motor plate, the slipper eliminator, and I think that's pretty much it. Somebody let me know if I'm wrong, but yeah, I think that's pretty much all the changes that they made. So it's essentially a lightweight version of the regular Cougar Laydown, intended for obviously stock spec racing, so like 17.5 racing like we have in the US, or maybe 21.5 or whatever you might have elsewhere in the world. So I'm going to rate this in a bunch of different categories as usual. Now this is graded on a curve, meaning 1 star is, you know, way below average, 5 stars is basically best in class, and 3 stars is average as compared to other buggies in this class. So I've also owned the TLI 22 5.0 Spec Racer, and also the Team Associated B6.2 Carpet Edition. So familiar with, you know, most of the current two-wheel drive race buggies, and so I feel like I have a reasonable experience in this comparison. Electronics wise, I'm running a Savox 1258 TG servo, Hobbywing XR10 just stock ESC. Yeah, that's what that is. Sorry, I had to double check. Sanwa little receiver, and then a Reedy 17.5 S Plus motor. So the build overall went pretty well. If you're not familiar with Schumachers, they are a little bit different. They can seem a little quirky. They've got some interesting things like the captured turnbuckles, which is nice. So they do have pre-made turnbuckles, which is pretty cool, at least for these captured ones. These steering rods, you do have to assemble yourself. I did have a couple bent parts, so 2 of my turnbuckles were actually bent, and I had to get replacements for those. Other issues I had was like some of these drive pins were actually kind of not mounted correctly. They weren't quite straight, so I had to just kind of center them. And then the transmission case was a little warped, a little kind of bowed out a little bit, so I did have to just kind of tighten everything down, and it seems okay now. There are some interesting things like these hinge pins, you know, have to mount a certain way. The shocks have kind of this 2-piece style plastic top and then an aluminum ring or aluminum collar, and you do have to drill out the holes for those little bleeder screws on the correct side, so a little quirky there. Other than that, I think everything was okay. You know, everything comes in parts bags. Body, you do have to cut yourself. Wing, you do have to cut yourself. It does come with wheels in the box, so that's pretty nice. No front wing. I actually am mounting a 22X4 wing up there on the front. Overall, yeah, due to those issues with bent turnbuckles, unfortunately, I don't think that's necessarily a one-off thing. I've had other issues with bent turnbuckles in the box with my Cat L1 Evo. And then, yeah, the diff also tends to leak a little bit. It just kind of has an O-ring wrapped around the perimeter of that, so it does not seal quite as well as other designs. So overall, build-wise, I am going to give it a below average score. I'm going to give it 2 stars just because of those issues I mentioned. It's not a bad build. It's just a little bit weird and some things you might quite get wrong if you've never built a Schumacher before. And then just a couple of those little issues I had. Next up is the design of the buggy. So let's kind of look through it real quick. So up front, it's got a plastic bulkhead, a little bit different. A lot of vehicles now are going like aluminum hinge pin braces or aluminum front ends, or at least the chassis goes all the way up to the front. This one, the chassis kind of ends early, and then you've got like this plastic here. You've got kind of this upright servo or diagonal servo. The reason for that is they just want to keep it sort of parallel with those bell cranks and running in the same plane, but that is a little bit different. You know, most buggies nowadays have the servo flat on the chassis, and a bunch of interesting little holes and stuff, I guess, for different chassis braces and stuff like that. But out of the box, it does not come with anything. It's got their S2 material, which is kind of like a composite fiberglass type material. Nice little integrated shock guard. So for you carpet guys like me, nice that they actually include a shock guard. As mentioned, they do have the 2-piece shock caps, all aluminum bodies, 12mm bore shocks, and then they actually run these like tapered springs like I've got here in the back. So another funky Schumacher thing, they've got these sort of these wide springs up top, and then they get narrow on the bottom. I think the reason for that is back in the day when they first introduced 12mm bore shocks, they wanted these springs kind of like backwards compatible with their small bore shocks. So interesting detail there. Adjustable front hubs. They use Schumacher wheels, of course. Now the carpet wheels are the same as associated wheels, but the dirt wheels actually have a slightly different offset, so kind of interesting there. Captured turnbuckles, like we said, but the rod ends on the steering turnbuckles are actually a little bit different. They're kind of this old school looking style thing. You definitely want to pick up an aluminum servo horn. You know, pretty much you want to do that for every 10 scale race buggy. Yeah, that's what we have in the front end. So the front end is actually quite light, not a lot of weight because everything's just kind of plastic front. So you definitely want to get some brass weights, especially on carpet. The shin splitter does make a big difference, and all these weights on the chassis make a big difference. Down the center of the vehicle, you've got an EC tray for easy modularity. You can pop out the electronics really easy with just a couple screws. Battery goes in the middle. You have adjustable positions. Uses this S2 material. Not the best battery strap system. I'm okay with it, but it is a little bit extra work because you've got 2 different screws, and then you got to pull these little straps out, stick in your battery, and then kind of reassemble going backwards. Now there is no fan mount. I actually built one out of a associated servo mount so I can mount a fan up top, but you pretty much just have to tape your fan on the chassis otherwise. Laydown transmission, of course, carbon fiber motor mount, direct drive or slipper eliminator type transmission system, super lightweight spur, by the way, and it's nicely machined as well. Carbon fiber transmission case. It's sort of a carbon composite type transmission. It is very light. And then on the back end, S2 shock mount, of course, same shocks in the rear. And then you got these really nice sort of bronze style CVAs in the back end. So adjustable axle height in the rear as well, adjustable roll center. You can of course adjust kick up, toe, all that kind of stuff, anti-squat in the rear. So sway bar mount integrated as well, and captured turnbuckles. So yeah, that's pretty much it, how it looks. It pretty much has all the standard modern adjustments with adjustable axle heights, adjustable diff heights. So I think overall, yeah, it's pretty much suitable for pretty much any type of condition, dirt, astroturf, carpet, like they tend to run in the UK. If I didn't realize this yet, it is a UK vehicle. Yeah, overall the design I think is pretty good. Things I would have liked to have seen differently, maybe a flat mounted servo, maybe a little more weight up front with a longer aluminum chassis or something like that. Now the carbon fiber chassis looks super nice, but it is very lightweight, and you do need to add a bunch of weight to this vehicle somehow, so it does seem a little bit excess or unneeded. But yeah, overall, I can't really complain anything about the design. I think it's pretty good overall. Maybe not class leading. It does have the easy access disc, but it does kind of have some weird funkiness, especially with the shocks, that I'm not a super big fan of. So I'm gonna give it a pretty good score, 4 stars, but I don't think it's perfect. It's just kind of weird, and depending on whether you view weird as good or bad, you know, could be scored a little bit higher, a little bit lower. But for me, you know, I think it's a pretty good design overall, 4 stars. Okay, let's talk about the performance, and I'm going to rate this performance-wise in a bunch of different areas. So this is obviously meant for spec class racing, where lightweight is king, and this is the lightweight king. I don't think there's a lighter two-wheel drive buggy on the market today. Like I said, out of the box, it's probably running about 1350 grams, fully ready to run. I'm talking with body, battery, tires, everything. So you definitely will need to add some weight. So I do recommend an aluminum chassis and all that brass stuff up front. So in sort of the weight category, this is the weight loss leader. Now, in terms of how it actually drives, every RC car you obviously have to tune to the track you're running, your driving style. The setup is really, really important to how a vehicle drives. So for me, the Michael Orlowski setup is pretty close. It did take me a while to get it exactly dialed how I want it, but I do think this is actually faster than my Team Associate B6.2 right now. But the B6.2, I'm just running like kit setup, so that buggy could definitely use some more work. So in terms of handling, it drives really nicely. A lot of steering. Definitely you can dial it in to drive how you want. I did not like the carbon fiber chassis. I definitely like the aluminum chassis a lot better. It just seems a little smoother, easier to drive. The carbon fiber chassis is much twitchier and tends to kind of just flex a lot and kind of load up a lot, and not really the ideal thing for carpet. In terms of jumping and landing, jumps and lands quite nicely. The shocks are pretty good. I don't think they're class leading, but you know, overall definitely above average quality. They do seem super smooth, even though they don't have any sort of special Delrin machined pistons or anything like that, but they do work for some reason. I'm not really sure if it's something different about the plastic shock caps and that two-piece design with the O-ring or what. Springs do work pretty well out of the box, although I do prefer running associated springs up front. Now, in terms of acceleration, unfortunately, this buggy for some reason runs a little bit hotter and a little bit slower than my other buggies. And I'm talking same electronics, same motor, ESC, same final drive ratio, same like everything. It just seems to run a little bit hotter and a little bit slower. I feel like the transmission case might not be quite as smooth. I end up going with the Delrin machined idler gear in the middle of that transmission to get a little more smoothness out of it. But I think the other problem is that the motor also tends to run a little bit hotter than you might find in another vehicle, so you tend to have to like either gear it down or run a little bit less timing. And I think that's actually due to the carbon fiber motor plate. So is the carbon fiber motor plate a good thing? I think in terms of weight, the answer is yes. In terms of heat dissipation, I think the answer is no. So a little bit of a trade-off there. I'm not sure if that's a good thing, but I do feel like that does contribute a little bit more to the heat. And I actually ended up kind of cutting up the front of the body a little bit to allow a little more air to enter through the cab and kind of flow through the entire buggy. So overall, performance wise, I'm going to give it 4 stars. It actually drives really well, but there are little weird quirks about the vehicle that not particularly super happy with. Heat dissipation is one of them, and then maybe slightly slower on the actual freeness of the drivetrain. So in performance category, really good, but not perfect. 4 stars. So how did this buggy hold up? And the answer is actually really well. I have not broken anything on this buggy, which I'll admit surprised me a little bit. I did think I was going to break some things. The entirely plastic front end kind of worried me, especially on carpet. On my B6.2, I ended up having to get a lot of aluminum parts up front. I don't think they're necessarily needed on this buggy, and the front end actually has been fairly stout. These arms don't look particularly beefy. The spindles especially look super thin, but I have not actually broken anything, so I can't really say that it's weak, even though my eyes kind of would tell me otherwise. So durability wise, this thing's held up really well. The wings held up really well. The body's held up really well. Chassis has not had any issues. Yeah, so overall, I do find the durability of this buggy to be quite good. Now, I have not gotten to run this as much as I would have liked over the last 5 months, but so far it's held up, so I got to give the durability 5 stars. I have not broken anything. Now, I did put on a little aluminum parts, but that wasn't needed. I ran it completely stock plastic for a while and did not have any issues with that. So overall durability, I'm actually going to give it 5 stars. Schumacher is pretty popular in the UK because they are a UK-based company. Most brands are most popular within their home country, so that may be great if you're in the UK. Here in the United States, this is pretty much a boutique brand. Not a lot of people run Schumacher. They are definitely one of the smaller brands. And in terms of getting parts, you're pretty much going to have to order online. Now, fortunately, there are places like Discount RC Store where you can get parts, but your local hobby store is probably not going to carry any Schumacher parts, so you're going to have to kind of be your own parts inventory supply. So in terms of actually getting support from Schumacher themselves, I really had no issues with the turnbuckles. They actually worked with me on sending out replacements pretty quickly, even though with all the pandemic type stuff going on in the world, mail was obviously quite slow, but they did work out with me actually pretty nicely on trying to get parts out. So big shout out to them for that. I think the company themselves are quite good. Definitely it's going to be a bigger advantage if you're in the UK or somewhere maybe in Europe. In the US it is definitely harder. In terms of setup sheets, they actually have quite a few setup sheets, probably more setup sheets than you can use. So on that front, it's actually really nice. So you can definitely get ideas on how to tune, but you also, on the other hand, will have to do a little more tuning yourself, because probably not going to be too many team drivers at your local track if you're in the United States. So, and the support and maintenance category, the buggy is easy to work on. No real issues. Front is slightly weird, but no real issues. They do have the split transmission in the back, so you can actually pop out the rear differential without a whole lot of screws. But on the support side, they are below average. So overall in the support and maintenance category, I'm going to give it a below average score, 2 stars, just because, at least for me in the United States, it is a harder brand to run, a little bit harder to get support and parts. Schumacher Cougar Laydown stock spec sells for $399 here in the United States. That is a bit more than most 10 scale RC buggies on the market. Team Associated, TLR, they're all a little bit less, so I do think they're slightly more expensive. Now you do get some pretty fancy parts. All the machined aluminum parts are really nice. The machined shock towers and stuff are super nice. All this S2 type material. Nowhere else I think you can get a carbon fiber chassis. Plastics, on the other hand, I did find some issues. I feel like the plastics quality maybe not top tier. They're good, but definitely the fitment and some of the molding and stuff like that may not be quite as well. I'm not a big fan of the differential in particular, because they just kind of have this O-ring design, does not seem to spin quite smoothly, and definitely leaks a little bit more than another diff design. So anyways, in the value category, I'm going to give it below average score because it is one of the higher priced 10 scale electric buggies on the market today. $400, at least here in the United States, is a little bit on the pricier side. I do think you get some extra value in the kit, but is it more than most other kits today that have carbon fiber shock tires and aluminum chassis and that kind of thing? I'm not sure that it really is. So in the value category, I'm going to give it 2 stars. So my final thoughts on the Schumacher Cougar Laydown stock spec is that performance-wise, I think it's excellent. It's fast, really no issues with the performance. Acceleration may be a little bit slower and maybe a little more heat, but the handling is phenomenal. It drives really well. Jumping and landing is really good. So I don't think you really give up anything on the performance front if you decide to run this buggy. Now, on the other hand, should you run this buggy? And in my opinion, it's kind of meant more for somebody that just wants to run something different. You know, if you've never driven an RC car before and you're starting racing for the first time, I would not recommend getting a smaller brand in general. You know, picking a more popular brand is just going to be easier to run. You'll be easier to get parts, easier to get some sort of help from team drivers and that kind of thing. If you want to run Schumacher, I think it is an awesome brand. I'm a big fan of Schumacher stuff in general. I think the parts quality, the design, it's just a really cool and neat buggy overall, and is definitely different. There's almost like nothing on this buggy that you would tend to see on other buggies. Just now, for good or bad, you know, that's kind of up to you. But if you want to be different, the Schumacher is about as different as you can get. Overall, yeah, I really like this buggy. Is it better than the B6.2 or the TLR or other brands? I don't think so in performance, and I'm not sure really in any category it's better, but it's really meant for the guy or the gal that just wants to run something different, and I don't think you give up anything performance-wise. So it's just for those people that want to, you know, march to a different drummer type of person, and that's who I'd recommend this buggy for. I like it. It's actually one of the most fun buggies for me to drive because it is just so different. When I drive my Associate or my TLR or whatever, it's kind of boring, honestly. Whereas with this thing, it's always fun to work on setup and tuning and all that kind of thing. And it just drives so different, and you know, definitely turns heads because no one knows what the heck this is. But yeah, I really enjoyed this buggy. But you kind of have to be the type of person that wants to run something different, in my opinion, if you decide to pick this thing up. So anyways, that's my review of the Schumacher Cougar Laydown stock spec. Hope you did enjoy this video. Definitely like, share, subscribe. Look for more videos soon. Thanks for watching.